I remember the days where mobile gaming was limited to things like Candy Crush or Clash of Clans. However, it seems like those days are a thing of the past because it was recently announced that AAA titles like Resident Evil Village and the RE4 Remake are coming to the new iPhone. And no, this is not some janky iOS port of a big game, much like we saw with the original release of Resident Evil 4 on mobile devices. Apparently these are the fully fledged version of the games, exactly like they are on your home console. And no, this is not a cloud version of the game either. Apparently these games are actually going to play natively on the iPhones, which is actually crazy to think about. After all, how are cell phones getting native support while the Switch is just getting cloud versions of Resident Evil titles? And it's not just the RE games coming to iOS. Death Stranding and Assassin's Creed Mirage are also on the way. So one thing I want to make perfectly clear, these mobile games are most likely not going to be exclusive to iOS devices. I'm sure many of them will also at some point make their way to Android phones as well. I mean, The Division Resurgence has already been announced for both iOS and Androids. However, the reason I'm talking about iOS and Apple more is because they are the ones that just dropped a bunch of information about the games coming to their device. In fact, IGN recently had a hands-off demo where they actually gave some pretty cool information. Here's what they had to say. We also learned that Resident Evil Village, the Resident Evil 4 Remake, Death Stranding, and Assassin's Creed Mirage are universal purchases. If you buy the game on the iPhone 15, the Pro version of these games, you can also run them on iPads, and in the case of RE Village and Death Stranding, you could play them on your Macs as well. But there is a caveat. The iOS versions, which are exclusive to the iPhone 15 Pro, only run on iPads and Macs that have the M1 chip or newer. So there you go. If you're an Apple fan and you're a gamer, I know there's not many of them, but if you are one of them, that's actually pretty cool. And I think it's a great practice. Buy and play anywhere is really great for consumers, at least in my opinion. I wouldn't necessarily be ready to ditch my consoles or PC just yet. After all, Apple still has a pretty horrible history with gaming. However, at least this is a step in the right direction. So I'm sure many people are wondering about the performance issues of playing a AAA game on your phone. And I will say there are going to be some drawbacks. For starters, it has been reported that Village was only running at 30 FPS on the phones. And they didn't even say what the resolution was. They just said it looked impressive on the iPhone. Since they weren't able to state the resolution, I can confidently say I highly doubt it's going to be running at 4K, because if it was, Apple will be shouting that from the rooftops. Personally, I think most of these games are going to be running closer to 720p on the phone. And I know that sounds like a knock against it. However, I don't think it's the end of the world. After all, the Steamdeck has a native resolution of 1280 by 800, which is basically 720p. And I think those games look just fine on that size of screen. And I do want to make a small note. While these games are in fact big blockbuster titles, they're also all cross-generation games. Even Assassin's Creed Mirage is coming out to the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. So I imagine the iOS version of these games will be closer to the last gen version instead of matching the power of, let's say, the PlayStation 5 or the Series X. I'm going to be interested if this takes off and it becomes popular and people start playing these big games on their phones, how the phones will handle, let's say, a next gen only title. But that's just something we're going to have to wait and see on. Now, as for the controls, if you're anything like me, you basically have zero interest in playing these games with touch controls on a phone screen. After all, just looking at this image of RE4, I think it looks really bad. I mean, it covers most of the screen and I could already feel my hands cramping just looking at it. That being said, the cool thing is you could really just connect any controller you want to your phone. You prefer the DualSense, you could sync the DualSense to the phone. If you're more of an Xbox guy, you could use your Xbox controller and just play the way you want. Or of course, you could use the popular backbone devices. I mean, you do have a ton of options, which is really nice. Overall, I don't want to speak for the majority, but I know personally, I'm still not super interested in playing games mainly on my cell phone. In fact, I'm not even really interested in playing games on Apple devices in general. However, I will admit, I do think this is actually extremely cool and very fascinating. The fact that these phones could even play these games in the first place. Plus, I love to see competition in the marketplace. Nintendo has basically dominated the handheld space for so long. And now with things like the Steamdeck, or the Rog Ally, or even your smartphone, hopefully Nintendo starts to take gaming a little bit more seriously, at least when it comes to the power in their hardware. And it's nice to see that the Switch 2 may finally actually have competition in the handheld space, which at the end of the day is great for consumers. Whether you're a mobile gamer, a Steam Deck guy, or just a Nintendo fanboy, competition always leads to better products for us. But I would love to hear what you all think. Are you guys excited to finally be able to play these games on the go on your cell phone? Are you like me and you're not very interested in this, but you still think it's cool that cell phone gaming is actually headed in this direction? Just let me know your overall thoughts in the comments down below. And if you made it this far and did enjoy the video, let me know by dropping a like. And if you are new, please consider subscribing. As for me, I got a ton of work to do, so I'm gonna get back to the grind. I'll catch you all next time. Peace.